The sky above the alien world was painted in strange colors. It was not blue like Earth, but a mix of silver and pale green. The air shimmered slightly as if it held hidden energy. Ryan, a lone human explorer, stepped out of his small survey ship and looked at the landscape with wide eyes. He had traveled across many worlds, but this one felt different from the very first moment. His mission was simple. He had to map the land, study the plants, and scan for signs of intelligent life. The ship's computers had already picked up strange energy signals coming from the forest, so he walked in that direction with a cautious pace. The ground beneath his boots was soft and covered in thick moss that glowed faintly in the shadows. It was silent except for the sound of his breathing inside the helmet. Ryan carried a scanner in one hand and a light tool in the other. He was careful not to damage anything because the rules of exploration were clear. If intelligent life existed here, then humans must not disturb it. His heart beat faster at the thought. Finding intelligent life was rare and important. As he moved deeper into the forest, the trees grew taller. Their trunks were smooth and silver, and their leaves stretched wide like wings. Strange creatures moved among the branches. Some had glowing eyes. Some had transparent wings that shone like glass. Ryan stayed calm. He had seen many strange animals on different planets before. But then something happened that made him freeze in place. Between two tall trees stood a figure. It was not an animal. It was not a machine. It was a person. The figure was slender, with long hair that caught the light of the forest. The most striking feature was the tail, long and flexible, swaying behind her like a living rope. Her eyes were bright, large, and full of alertness. She did not wear any heavy clothing, only light coverings made from woven plants. She was clearly from this world, and she was clearly watching him. Ryan stopped walking. His instincts told him not to make any sudden move. The alien girl's tail twitched quickly as soon as he looked at her. The movement seemed almost like a message. It was not random. It showed nervousness, perhaps even fear. He raised one hand slowly to show he meant no harm. He did not speak at first, because he knew his words would mean nothing to her. Instead, he lowered his scanner to the ground and stepped back a little, giving her space. The girl tilted her head, her bright eyes never leaving him. Her tail twitched again, a sharp motion that matched her tension. But she did not run. That fact alone made Ryan's heart race. Most wild creatures would have fled. She stayed. For long minutes, neither of them moved. The forest sounds returned, with soft chirps and rustling leaves. Ryan breathed slowly, trying to look calm even though excitement ran through his chest. He had found her. This was not only intelligent life. This was a being who could choose, who could decide to stay or go, and she had chosen to stay in his sight. Finally, Ryan reached into his pack and pulled out a small ration bar. He held it up, then crouched and placed it on a flat rock in the open space between them. Slowly, he stepped back again. His movements were steady, not rushed, because he wanted her to understand that he was offering and not demanding. The girl's eyes flicked to the object. Her tail twitched in short bursts, as if debating. She took a slow step forward, then stopped. Another step, then her ears tilted slightly. Her tail whipped once, then slowed down. Ryan realized that her tail was like a window into her feelings. Every movement told him what she felt inside. Right now, she was uncertain but tempted. She bent slightly, picked up the ration bar with delicate fingers, and sniffed it. She looked at Ryan again, holding his gaze. When she finally tasted it, Her eyes widened slightly. Her tail made a slow swaying motion that seemed less tense. Ryan could not stop the small smile that spread across his face. It was working. The first barrier between them was beginning to fall. But he did not step closer. He stayed where he was, knowing that trust could not be forced. If he rushed, he might break the fragile moment. Instead, he sat down on a low stone and placed his scanner beside him. He lowered his shoulders, trying to appear less like a soldier and more like a simple traveler. The girl watched him for a while. She chewed carefully, then tucked the rest of the food into a small pouch at her side. Her tail twitched again when he shifted his arm, but not as sharply as before. The tension was lessening, little by little. Minutes passed, and the forest grew quieter, as if respecting the strange meeting. A bird-like creature flew above them, casting shadows on the ground. Ryan kept his eyes on the girl, memorizing every detail. Her hair shimmered in the strange green light of the sky. Her skin was pale but carried faint markings that looked almost like patterns of leaves. Her tail swayed with a rhythm that matched her breathing. She was unlike anything he had ever seen, and yet he felt something familiar in her presence. Finally, the girl stepped back into the shadows of the trees. Her tail twitched once more, quick and sharp, as if to remind him not to follow. Then she disappeared between the trunks, leaving Ryan alone again. Ryan exhaled slowly, realizing he had been holding his breath. His heart pounded with both relief and wonder. He had made contact, even if it was brief. He knew she would come back. There had been no anger in her eyes, only caution and curiosity. He looked at the empty space where she had stood and whispered to himself, though he knew she could not hear. "I will not harm you. I just want to understand." The forest was still, but he felt it was no longer empty. Somewhere among the silver trees, she was watching him, and her tail was twitching again. That night, Ryan returned to his small camp near the ship. He recorded everything he had seen into the log, his voice calm but filled with excitement. The report would one day be sent back to Earth, but deep inside he knew this encounter was not just part of a mission. It was the beginning of something more. As he closed his eyes to rest, he thought of her bright eyes and the nervous motion of her tail. He knew tomorrow he would return to the forest, and he knew she would be there again. The next morning, Ryan left his camp early. The silver light of the alien sky was softer at dawn, and the air was cool. He carried only a small pack with food and a scanner. His steps were quiet as he walked back to the place where he had met the alien girl the day before. His heart carried both hope and doubt. Would she return? Or had she decided that he was too dangerous? The forest greeted him with the same strange beauty. Leaves glowed faintly in the dim light, and creatures whispered in the branches above. He moved carefully, remembering the way her eyes had followed his every step. Trust had started to grow, but it was still fragile. When he reached the clearing, he stopped and waited. He sat down on the same low stone where he had rested before. He placed another ration bar on the same flat rock between them, then leaned back and waited. He did not call out. He did not move around. He simply waited, knowing that patience was the only path forward. For a long time, nothing happened. The forest was alive, but the clearing was silent. Ryan listened to the beating of his own heart. He was about to give up when he heard a soft rustle behind the trees. His eyes shifted, but he did not stand up. Slowly, the figure appeared once again. It was her. The alien girl stepped into the light, cautious as before. Her tail twitched with small, sharp motions, revealing her unease. but her eyes were fixed on the ration bar on the rock. Ryan stayed still, his hands resting on his knees. He gave her space, just as he had the day before. She took one step forward, then stopped. Her tail flicked again, faster this time, then slowed. She was fighting her nerves, but she did not leave. At last, she walked closer and picked up the ration bar. She sniffed it, then looked at Ryan with sharp eyes. Her tail twitched again, but not with fear this time. It was a slower, curious movement, as if she was asking a silent question. Ryan raised one hand, not to reach for her, but to point at himself. Then he tapped his chest. "Ryan," he said softly. His voice was calm and steady. He did not expect her to understand, but he wanted her to hear his name. The girl tilted her head. Her tail moved slowly in a half circle, then flicked once. She tapped her own chest and made a soft sound that carried through the air. "Nira." Ryan's eyes widened slightly. He had not expected her to share her name so soon. He repeated it, careful to match her sound. "Nira." Her tail flicked again, but this time it was gentler, almost like a wave. She stepped back, studying him as if testing his intent. Ryan smiled faintly. This was progress. He had her name, and she had his. It was a small bridge, but it was real. The two of them stayed in the clearing for a long time. Ryan did not try to move closer. Instead, he took a stick from the ground and began drawing shapes in the soft dirt. He drew a simple star, then a circle for a planet. He pointed at the sky, then at the drawing. Nira watched him carefully. Her tail twitched in a curious rhythm, and then she crouched down as well. She picked up another stick and drew her own shapes. They were different, more complex, like flowing patterns of waves. She pointed at the trees, then at her drawing. Ryan realized that she was trying to show him her world through marks on the ground. It was not words, but it was communication. They went back and forth for a long time, sketching and pointing. He drew his ship, a simple shape with wings. She drew a large tree with spreading roots. He drew a small stick figure of himself. She drew one of herself, with a long tail that curled behind. They both paused, then looked at each other. For the first time, Nira gave a soft laugh, almost like music carried by the wind. Her tail twitched quickly, but the motion seemed playful, not tense. Ryan's heart warmed at the sound. It was the first moment that felt less like fear and more like friendship. The hours passed. When Ryan offered her another piece of food, she did not hesitate this time. She took it and even broke off a small part to place on the rock for him in return. He accepted it with a nod, even though he was not sure if it was safe to eat. The gesture mattered more than the taste. As the light above shifted toward afternoon, Nira stood up. She looked at him for a long moment, her tail swaying slowly in calm arcs. Then she pointed toward the deeper forest. It was not a sharp command, but more of an invitation. She wanted him to follow. Ryan hesitated. His mission logs told him to avoid unknown dangers. His training reminded him to stay close to the ship. But his heart pulled him forward. He rose to his feet and nodded. Nira moved ahead with graceful steps, her tail brushing the air behind her. Ryan followed carefully, keeping some distance but staying close enough not to lose her. The forest grew denser, and the air filled with strange scents. She led him to a small stream where clear water ran over smooth stones. Strange flowers grew along the bank, their petals glowing softly. Nira crouched and cupped water in her hands, drinking with ease. She gestured for him to try. Ryan filled his small bottle and took a cautious sip. The water was cool and clean. He smiled and nodded, and Nira's tail twitched gently, as if she approved. They spent more time near the stream. Nira pointed at plants, showing which ones had fruit and which ones were dangerous. She used simple gestures, and Ryan tried to copy her motions. Each time he misunderstood, her tail twitched fast with amusement, and she repeated the gesture until he got it right. By the time the sky grew darker with evening colors, Ryan felt a quiet bond forming between them. They had no shared language, but they had shared food, drawings, and simple lessons. He could see that she no longer viewed him only with fear. Curiosity had taken its place. When they returned to the clearing, Nira paused. Her eyes locked on his, and her tail gave one last gentle flick before she stepped back into the trees. She disappeared into the shadows, leaving him alone again. Ryan stood in the clearing, filled with a strange calm. He knew she would return tomorrow. The silence between them was not empty anymore. It was full of meaning, carried in her bright eyes and the quiet twitch of her tail. Ryan woke up early again the next morning. His small camp near the ship felt quiet, but his mind was already full of thoughts about Nira. He replayed the images of her bright eyes and the way her tail had swayed the day before. Each twitch had carried meaning, and he wanted to learn more. He packed food, water, and his scanner before setting out for the clearing. The forest greeted him with soft sounds. Birds with glass-like wings flitted above the trees. Small animals darted through the glowing moss. The air smelled fresh, with a hint of flowers carried on the wind. Ryan felt more comfortable in the forest now, almost as if it had accepted his presence. When he reached the clearing, he stopped in his usual place. He set a small piece of food on the flat rock, just as before. Then he sat down on the low stone, waiting quietly. His patience was rewarded when he saw a familiar figure moving between the trees. Nira stepped into the clearing, her eyes sharp and alert. Her tail twitched quickly at first, showing her nerves, but then slowed as she recognized him. She walked closer, not rushing, but with less hesitation than before. She picked up the food, gave it a small sniff, and tucked it into her pouch. Then she looked at him with calm eyes. Ryan smiled softly and tapped his chest. Ryan. Nira's tail flicked gently, and she tapped her own chest. Nira. Their names were now a ritual. Each time they said them, the air between them grew warmer. This time, Ryan tried something new. He picked up a stick and drew a simple shape in the dirt again, but instead of a star or planet, he drew a rough image of her. He added the long tail, curling behind the figure. Then he pointed at the drawing and said her name. Nira. She tilted her head and stared at the shape. Her tail twitched in quick bursts, almost like surprise. Then she crouched down and drew her own figure, this one of him, with shorter limbs and no tail. She pointed at it and said his name softly. Ryan. He laughed gently, touched by the exchange. They had found another way to understand each other. For the next hour, they continued drawing. Nira showed him symbols that seemed to represent trees, rivers, and mountains. She pointed at the forest around them as if teaching him her language through pictures. Ryan copied her symbols clumsily, earning soft laughs each time he made them uneven. Her tail flicked fast when she laughed, but it was not a nervous twitch. It was playful, light, and free. Ryan began to notice how much her tail revealed about her feelings. When she was cautious, it flicked in sharp motions. When she was calm, it swayed slowly. When she was amused, it whipped lightly from side to side. He realized it was more than a body part. It was a voice without words. As the day went on, Nero led him away from the clearing once more. She guided him to a grove where tall trees stood in a circle. Their roots were thick and twisted, forming natural seats. At the center of the grove grew a glowing flower taller than Ryan himself. Its petals shimmered with a silver light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Nira touched the flower gently, then stepped back to let him see. Her tail moved slowly, almost with pride. Ryan approached carefully, scanning the flower with his device. The readings showed strong energy, unlike anything he had studied before. He looked at Nira and nodded, trying to show respect. She gave a small smile and swayed her tail in calm arcs. They sat together near the roots, sharing quiet moments. Ryan took out his bottle and offered her water. She accepted, sipping with delicate hands before returning it. Then she showed him a piece of fruit from a nearby tree. She bit into it first, then handed him the other half. He hesitated but trusted her. The taste was sweet, like honey. For the first time, they shared a meal side by side. There was no language between them, but there was comfort. Later, as the sun dipped lower and the green sky grew darker, they returned toward the clearing. The forest sounds grew louder with night creatures stirring. Ryan stayed close, following her careful steps. At one point, a rustle in the bushes made him tense. He gripped his tool, ready for danger. But Nira touched his arm lightly, her tail flicking once. It was a gesture of calm. The sound faded, and no threat appeared. That single touch stayed with him. It was not long or heavy. Just a brief, careful touch, but it told him she trusted him enough to reach out. When they arrived back at the clearing, Nira paused again. She looked at him with eyes that seemed brighter in the fading light. Her tail twitched in small, even motions, neither sharp nor nervous. She tapped her chest once more. Nira. Ryan tapped his own chest. Ryan. They exchanged their names a final time before she stepped back into the shadows. Her figure vanished among the trees, leaving only the memory of her presence. Ryan stood alone in the clearing, his heart full. He returned to his camp under the silver-green sky, recording the events in his log. But no words could capture the feeling of sitting beside her, eating fruit, and hearing her laugh. That night, he lay on his bed inside the small ship and stared at the ceiling. He thought about how her tail had moved when she was calm, when she was playful, and when she had touched his arm. He thought about how her bright eyes had looked into his without fear. He realized he was no longer just completing a mission. He was building a fragile trust with someone who was both different and yet so familiar. And he knew that tomorrow, he would return again. The days passed in quiet rhythm. Each morning, Ryan walked into the forest with food in his pack and curiosity in his heart. Each time, Nira appeared from the trees, her tail twitching in different ways, always revealing her feelings. At first she had been cautious, but now her tail often swayed in calm arcs when she saw him. They shared food, drew in the dirt, and explored together. Ryan began to feel at home in the alien world. The ship behind him was only a reminder of Earth, but the forest ahead felt alive in a way that drew him in. He often forgot his mission and found himself waiting only for Nira's smile, her laugh, and the way her tail moved when she was amused. One evening, however, the peace broke. Ryan had stayed longer in the forest than usual. He and Nira had gone deeper, following a trail of glowing flowers along a stream. She showed him how the plants released light when touched, creating a path through the shadows. They laughed when his scanner beeped wildly at the strange energy, and she teased him with gestures when he could not understand her symbols. As night began to fall, they decided to return. The forest was changing with the fading light. The soft sounds of birds were replaced by heavier rustles. Strange calls echoed between the trees. Ryan felt a chill as the air grew thicker. Nira walked ahead, her steps light and graceful. Her tail flicked in short bursts, sharper than before. Ryan recognized the signal. She was alert. Something was different tonight. Suddenly, a growl rolled through the forest. It was low and deep, shaking the ground beneath his boots. Ryan froze, and Nira stopped instantly. Her tail lashed hard, a warning. She looked back at him with urgent eyes, then pointed upward toward the trees. Ryan followed her lead. They climbed quickly onto a thick root that rose like a platform. Just as they pulled themselves higher, a massive creature emerged from the shadows below. It was larger than any animal Ryan had seen on this planet so far. Its body was covered in dark scales, and its eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Sharp claws dug into the moss as it sniffed the ground, searching for prey. Its mouth opened to reveal long teeth, and a hiss escaped. Ryan's heart pounded. His first instinct was to reach for the light tool at his side, but Nira shook her head quickly. Her tail whipped back and forth in fast, sharp motions. She was telling him to stay quiet. The beast moved slowly, sniffing the air. It circled near the stream, then paused. Ryan could see its muscles tense, ready to strike. Nira crouched low, her hand gripping his arm tightly. The pressure of her fingers told him how serious this was. He stayed still, holding his breath. For long minutes, the creature prowled around the clearing. Every sound of its claws against stone made Ryan's chest tighten. His mind raced with escape plans, but he knew any sudden movement would draw its attention. At last, the beast turned away, lumbering deeper into the forest. Its heavy steps faded into the distance. Ryan exhaled slowly, his shoulders dropping in relief. Nira, however, did not relax at once. Her tail flicked fast even after the creature was gone. She gestured for him to follow, leading him quickly along a higher path of roots and stones. They moved without a word, careful not to disturb the silence. When they finally reached a safer place, Nira stopped. She looked at him with serious eyes, her tail twitching in slow, uneasy arcs. She made gestures with her hands, sharp and pointed, as if warning him that the forest held more dangers than he understood. Ryan nodded. He placed his hand on his chest, then pointed at her, trying to show he was grateful. "Thank you, Nira." She tilted her head, her tail flicking in a small, softer motion. She understood his meaning, even without knowing the words. That night, Ryan returned to his camp with heavy thoughts. He recorded the event in his log, describing the size of the creature, its features, and its behavior. But when he spoke into the recorder, his voice carried something more than scientific detail. It carried awe and respect for Nira. She had saved him. Without her warning, he might have faced the beast unprepared. The next morning, he went back to the forest, unsure if she would appear. But she did. She stepped from the shadows with the same bright eyes, though her tail twitched in slow, thoughtful motions. She carried a small bundle of plants and placed them on the rock between them. Ryan crouched and studied the plants. They had wide leaves and a strange scent. Nira gestured to her skin, then mimed rubbing the leaves on her arm. Ryan understood. These were protective plants, meant to hide scent or repel predators. She was teaching him how to survive. He smiled and copied her motion, rubbing the leaves on his own arm. She gave a small laugh, her tail flicking in quick amusement. The tension of the night before slowly eased into lightness again. Over the next days, Ryan and Nero became closer. They no longer needed to wait long minutes in silence. She appeared quickly when he entered the clearing, her tail moving in smooth arcs instead of sharp flicks. She taught him more about the forest, showing which plants could be eaten and which could burn the skin. He showed her his scanner, letting her see how it read energy. She touched the device with fascination, her tail twitching in curiosity. The memory of the beast still lingered, but it also brought them closer. Each time they moved through the forest together, they stayed side by side, alert to every sound. Ryan began to feel not only trust but also a bond, as if they were partners facing the unknown. One evening, as the sky turned darker than usual, they sat near the glowing flower grove. Nero pointed at the stars above, then at him, as if asking about his home. Ryan drew a rough picture of Earth in the dirt, circling it with other stars. He pointed at himself and then at the sky. Her tail twitched in slow thought. She touched the drawing lightly, then pointed at her chest. She was showing that this world was her home, just as Earth was his. For a moment, they both sat quietly, their drawings connecting their worlds. When Ryan returned to his ship that night, he could not stop thinking about her hand gripping his arm during the danger, about her tail twitching in fear yet not letting go. She could have run alone, but she had chosen to stay with him. It was more than survival. It was trust. And he knew that trust was growing stronger with each passing day. The days grew warmer, and the silver-green sky often shimmered with streaks of light. Ryan had started to feel the rhythm of the alien world. He no longer woke up thinking about the mission first. He woke up thinking about Nira. Every morning, he looked forward to meeting her in the clearing, to hearing her soft laugh, and to watching the way her tail moved with each new emotion. Their bond had grown deeper since the night of the beast. Nira no longer appeared cautious when she came to him. Her tail often swayed gently, a sign of calm. Sometimes it flicked quickly in amusement when he failed to understand her gestures. Sometimes it curled behind her slowly when she was thoughtful. Ryan had learned to read her feelings without a single word spoken. But he wanted more. He wanted to speak to her. He wanted to share not only gestures and drawings, but also thoughts. Words had always been his way of connection. Now he was trying to build them between two worlds. One morning, as they sat by the stream, Ryan decided to start. He picked up a stick and drew a circle in the dirt. Then he pointed at the sun above and said clearly, "Sunday." Nira tilted her head. Her tail twitched in slow thought. She crouched down and touched the circle. Then she made a soft sound in her language, a sound like flowing air. Ryan repeated it clumsily, his voice rough and uneven. Nira burst into laughter, her tail flicking fast from side to side. She covered her mouth, but her eyes sparkled with amusement. Ryan laughed too, though his cheeks grew warm. "All right, I am terrible at this." Nira leaned forward and repeated the sound slowly, as if teaching a child. Ryan tried again, this time closer. She nodded, her tail giving a light, approving twitch. Then she tapped her chest proudly, as if saying he had done well. From that moment, they began to share words. Ryan pointed at things, spoke their names in his language, and listened as Nira gave the names in hers. Rock, water, tree, bird. Sometimes he repeated her sounds well, and she smiled. Sometimes he failed completely, and she laughed until her shoulders shook. The lessons were full of mistakes, but they were also full of joy. Ryan loved the sound of her laughter. It was soft and musical, echoing in the forest like a hidden song. Each time she laughed, her tail flicked quickly, and he felt his heart lift. In return, Nira tried to say his words. Her voice shaped the human sounds with effort. When she said water, it came out uneven but clear enough. Ryan clapped his hands and grinned. Yes, water. You did it. Her tail swayed in wide arcs, and she smiled with quiet pride. They repeated this day after day. Slowly, their shared list of words grew. They still used drawings and gestures for complex ideas, but now they could say small things. It was enough to make their connection feel stronger than ever. One afternoon, while sitting near the glowing flower grove, Nira surprised him. She touched her chest and said, "Nira." Then she pointed at him and said softly, "Ryan." He nodded, smiling warmly. "Yes. Ryan." Her tail swayed in calm motions. Then she placed her hand on the ground and drew two figures side by side, one with a tail and one without. She pointed at both, then said his name and hers again, almost like joining them together. Ryan felt his chest tighten in a way he could not describe. It was more than names. It was a statement that they belonged together in this place, two lives meeting in the forest. The bond grew even deeper that evening. They walked back to the clearing as the light faded, and Ryan stumbled on a root. He caught himself quickly, but Nero laughed, her tail flicking in fast amusement. She imitated his clumsy step with exaggerated motion, and he could not help but laugh as well. The forest echoed with their shared joy. But there were also serious moments. One night, as they sat in the clearing, Nero pointed at the stars and then at his ship. Her tail moved in slow, uneasy arcs. She made a gesture of leaving, moving her hand away from her chest. Then she looked at him with eyes that carried both question and worry. Ryan understood. She was asking if he would leave. He hesitated. His mission was still running. The recall signal from Earth would come soon. But looking into her eyes, he could not bring himself to say yes. He pointed at himself, then at the ground, then at her. "Ryan stays. With Nira." She tilted her head, her tail twitching slowly, as if unsure. Then she smiled softly and touched his arm. That simple touch told him everything. She wanted him to stay. The next days were filled with even more shared lessons. Ryan showed her his tools one by one. His scanner fascinated her most of all. She watched the screen with wide eyes as he scanned plants and rocks. She touched the glowing symbols, her tail flicking with excitement. She even tried to mimic the beeping sound, making him laugh. In return, she showed him more of the forest. She led him to hidden groves where fruit grew in bunches. She showed him plants that glowed brighter when crushed and could be used as light. She taught him to listen for the low hum of insects that warned of storms. Each lesson made Ryan realize how much she knew, how deeply she belonged to this world. He was a visitor, clumsy and curious. She was its child, graceful and wise. But together, they made sense. One evening, as the stars filled the sky, Ryan and Nira sat side by side near the stream. He spoke softly, pointing at the stars. "Home," he said, drawing earth in the dirt. Then he pointed at her, at the trees, at the glowing sky. "Home." She watched him for a long moment. Then she pointed at both of them, drew their figures side by side again, and whispered in her soft voice, Home. Her tail swayed gently, not sharp, not nervous. It was calm, steady, and warm. Ryan felt his throat tighten. He realized then that home was no longer a planet. It was not Earth, and it was not this world alone. Home was wherever they stood together. That night, as he returned to his camp, his heart was full. The mission still existed, and the recall signal would soon arrive, but those thoughts no longer held the same weight. What mattered now was Nira. Her laughter, her eyes, her tail, and the fragile words they had built between them. It was more than survival, more than exploration. It was connection. And it was growing stronger each day. The night was quiet. The forest glowed with faint blue lights from hidden plants, and the stream hummed its endless song. Ryan sat by his small campfire, staring at the black device on the ground. It was the communicator, silent until now. Tonight, it blinked with a soft red light. His recall signal had arrived. Earth was calling him back. Ryan felt his chest grow heavy. He had been waiting for this moment since landing. Weeks ago, he would have been overjoyed. Now, all he felt was conflict. Leaving meant safety, mission success, and return to familiar skies. But it also meant leaving Nira. The fire crackled softly as he thought. He touched the communicator but did not press the response key. Instead, he stared at the trees, thinking of the alien girl whose tail twitched whenever he came close. The next morning, Nira appeared in the clearing, her smile bright. She carried a basket of fruit and placed it before him. Her tail swayed with light energy, a sign of happiness. But when she looked into his eyes, her expression changed. She sensed something was wrong. Ryan tried to smile, but it did not reach his eyes. He drew the symbol of the ship in the dirt, then pointed at the stars. Nira's tail froze, then moved in slow, uneasy arcs. She understood. Her ears tilted slightly, her gaze lowered. She sat quietly, her tail curling around her legs. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the stream filled the silence. Ryan wanted to explain. He pointed at his chest, then at the stars, then back at her. "Ryan, go." His voice was heavy. Nira's tail twitched, uncertain. She drew two figures again in the dirt, side by side. Then she pointed at him, then at the stars, then crossed her hands as if refusing. She shook her head slowly. It hurt to see her like that. He wanted to say he would never leave. But he also knew his people expected him to return. His voice would carry proof that this world held life. Earth's explorers would follow. That thought gave him pause. What would happen if they came? Would they see Nira as he saw her? Or would they see only resources and territory? That night, Ryan lay awake in his camp. The communicator blinked steadily. The recall order would repeat until he answered. He thought of Earth, of duty, of familiar skies. Then he thought of Nira, of her soft laugh, her glowing eyes, and her tail that spoke what words could not. The next day, Nira led him deep into the forest. She moved quickly, her tail swaying with purpose. Ryan followed, unsure of where she was taking him. They passed glowing flowers, crossed narrow streams, and climbed rocky hills. Finally, they reached a wide cliff that overlooked the valley. From there, he could see the endless forest stretching to the horizon, glowing like a living sea. Nira stood at the edge, her tail lifted high. She spread her arms as if to say, "This is my world." Ryan stepped beside her. He looked at the vast land, then at her. He understood the message. She was showing him what he would leave behind. Not only her, but the beauty of this place, untouched and pure. Her eyes turned to him, searching for an answer. He could not give one yet. That evening, as they returned, a sudden roar broke through the forest. The ground shook, and birds scattered into the glowing sky. Nira's tail stiffened in alarm. She grabbed Ryan's arm and pulled him toward cover. From the shadows, they saw it. Another beast, larger than the one before, moved through the trees. Its scales shimmered in faint blue light, and its long claws tore at the earth. It sniffed the air, searching. Ryan reached for his small laser cutter. It was not a weapon, but it could defend them if needed. Nira crouched low, her hand gripping his tightly. Her tail flicked fast, full of fear. The beast moved closer. Its eyes glowed faintly, and its roar shook the leaves. Ryan felt his heart race. He whispered softly, "Stay quiet." But before the beast reached them, another sound filled the air. A distant echo of machines. Ryan froze. He knew that sound. It was a shuttle engine. He looked up. Through the gaps in the trees, he saw a faint light descending. It was not his small ship. It was larger, sleek, and silver. Earth had already sent another team. Nira's tail twitched in confusion. She looked at him, eyes wide. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He realized the truth. If more humans landed, they would find her people. They would explore, take samples, maybe even claim the land. The beast roared again, but now it was running away, startled by the new noise. The ground shook as it disappeared into the distance. The forest grew silent once more, except for the fading hum of engines. Nero looked at him, waiting for answers. He did not know what to say. His people were here, and everything would change. That night, he sat by the fire with Nira. She stayed close, her tail curled gently, but her eyes searched his face. She knew something was coming. Ryan stared at the communicator again. The red light blinked steadily. He had two choices: answer and bring his people, or ignore and stay with her. He thought of home. He thought of Nira. He thought of both futures, standing on the edge of choice. As the night deepened, he whispered softly to himself, "What is home without her?" Nira tilted her head, her ears rising slightly, as if sensing the weight of his words even without understanding them. Ryan did not sleep that night. He sat awake, watching the communicator's light blink like a heartbeat. His heart beat with it, heavy and uncertain. The forest whispered around him, and the stars shone above. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. But here, beside him, Nero was waiting too. The morning light filtered softly through the silver leaves. Ryan sat by the camp, staring at the blinking communicator. The recall signal from Earth was persistent. Every pulse reminded him of duty, responsibility, and the world he had left behind. Yet he felt no joy in it. His mind and heart belonged here, with Nira, in this forest that had become his second home. He looked toward the clearing. Nira appeared almost at the same time, carrying a small bundle of glowing fruit. Her tail swayed slowly, a sign of calm curiosity. Her eyes met his, and she tilted her head. She sensed his thoughts even before he spoke. Ryan rose and walked to her. He placed his hand on the small rock between them and then touched his chest, pointing at her and then at himself. "Ryan stays here. With Nira." Nira's eyes widened for a moment. Then a soft smile spread across her face. Her tail flicked lightly, slower and gentler than ever before. She understood. She accepted. The forest seemed to pause around them, holding its breath. Birds with glass-like wings flew overhead, and the stream hummed gently. Nothing else mattered except the bond between them. Ryan realized that staying did not mean abandoning his mission. He could still study the world, record its beauty, and protect it. But he would do it with someone who had become his companion, his guide, and his friend. The next days were filled with work and learning. Ryan built a small base near the clearing, using lightweight materials from his ship. He worked alongside Nira, who guided him to safe spots and showed him where the ground was stable. Her tail twitched with excitement as each structure rose, simple but strong. Together, they explored further. Nero led him to hidden groves with fruit that glowed under the silver-green sky. She showed him plants that healed scratches and plants that could be used for light at night. Every lesson carried meaning, and every gesture was filled with trust. At night, they sat by the fire. Ryan pointed at the stars and drew maps in the dirt, marking where the streams and glowing flowers were. Nira traced his drawings with small fingers, adding patterns and symbols he could not yet understand. They laughed when mistakes were made, and the forest echoed with their joy. Even the other creatures seemed to accept them now. Small animals watched from a distance, and birds settled closer when the forest grew quiet. It was as if the forest recognized their partnership and allowed them space to exist together. One evening, while exploring a hill overlooking the valley, they saw movement far in the distance. It was another human shuttle, descending slowly into the forest. Ryan's heart tightened. Earth was sending others. Nira's tail flicked rapidly, showing alarm. She pulled Ryan back, hiding behind a tree. Ryan touched her arm gently, trying to calm her. He whispered softly, though she could not understand the words. "We can handle this. Together." The shuttle landed quietly. Ryan watched as humans stepped out, scanning the forest with devices. They moved carefully, not yet noticing him. Nira crouched beside him, her tail flicking nervously. Ryan took a deep breath. He could not let them harm the forest or Nira's world. He had to act carefully. He pointed at her, then at himself, and drew a small symbol in the dirt. It was a simple plan: stay hidden, observe, and learn before contact. Over the next hours, they watched the newcomers. Ryan realized that he had to teach them the same lessons he had learned from Nira. Respect, patience, and trust were required. He could not force them, but he could show them the way. Night came, and the humans set up a small camp. Ryan and Nira retreated to a higher hill. She pressed her hand to his chest, her tail swaying slowly, as if giving him courage. He held her hand in return, silently promising protection. In that quiet moment, he understood something important. His mission had changed. It was no longer about mapping a world or returning home. It was about connection. It was about showing that understanding, kindness, and trust could exist even across worlds. The next day, they approached the new humans cautiously. Ryan spoke softly, using gestures and the small vocabulary he had built with Nira. She followed him, tail swaying in calm arcs, showing no fear. The humans froze at first, surprised to see life so close. Ryan guided them slowly, showing signs of trust through his gestures. Nira mirrored his movements, adding her own signals. Her tail twitched gently, playful yet confident. Over time, the newcomers began to understand. They saw the forest as Ryan and Nira had shown them. They saw its beauty, its balance, and the intelligence of the creatures that lived there. Slowly, fear gave way to curiosity, and curiosity gave way to respect. Ryan looked at Nira, and her eyes sparkled. She had taught him patience, understanding, and trust. Now, he was teaching others the same lessons. Days passed, and the forest became a place where humans and alien life coexisted peacefully. Ryan stayed, building his base, recording discoveries, and learning endlessly from Nira. Her tail twitched with every new adventure, a constant reminder of her presence and her feelings. At night, they sat together near the stream. Ryan drew the stars in the dirt again, marking the places he had been and the paths he would explore. Nira traced the drawings with gentle fingers, adding symbols only she understood. They sat quietly, hands touching, tails swaying in soft arcs. Ryan realized then that he had found more than a mission. He had found a home. Not a single place, but a connection that reached across differences, across species, and across worlds. Nero leaned her head slightly against his shoulder. Her tail flicked in gentle happiness, curling around them both. Ryan smiled, feeling a warmth he had never known on Earth. The stars above shone bright, reflecting in the streams below. The forest was alive and calm, full of sounds and light, and it was theirs together. He whispered softly, though the words were for himself. "This is home. With you." Nero pressed her hand against his chest, tapping once. Her tail swayed slowly. She understood. For the first time, Ryan felt the mission, the forest, and the life around him as one. The choice had been made. He had stayed not only for exploration but for connection, trust, and friendship. Together, he and Nero faced the unknown world, ready for every adventure that would come. And as the night deepened, they watched the glowing forest together. The stars above and the life around them were silent witnesses. Two beings from different worlds had built trust, friendship, and love. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs. Ryan smiled at Nira. Her tail flicked gently in response. That simple motion spoke more than words ever could.